Hey folks, normally I'm the guy behind the camera here at Huckabones, but today we're actually going to be bringing in my LX2620. I just purchased this here at Huckabones, and it's time for its 50-hour service. So what we're going to do is actually go into what that means, and we have a tech here, Jordan, who's going to walk us around all of that, and we're going to go through the entire thing front to back, so stay tuned. Okay guys, so what we're doing here is I've got a tech, Jordan from Huckabones, and we're going to go over the entire 50-hour service. Now, this is what I call like a rattle check. You know, bolts can loosen. We have to make sure everything's torqued down for manufacturing, assembly, that kind of stuff, right? Yep. What are some of the components that we're looking at that could come loose?
Loader frames, wheel bolts, your front grill guard, anything like that over time. Over the first 50 hours could come loose, but
yeah, just double check.
Just a double check once over.
Then of course we have to go over the basics, air filters, fluids. I know there's hydraulic fluid. We're not actually dropping fluids though. No. We're checking for shavings and filters? Yeah,
we're just changing the filters. It could still be some shavings left from machining that are in the transmission that work their way into the filters over the first 50 hours. So it's good to drop them off, put new ones on.
Right, so that first 50 hours is kind of important. Just a double check so you can get that initial longevity that you're looking for. So we're going to go through that entire process. We're going to bring you guys along and just talk about the importance of why. For me, this is my personal machine. This basically maintains my entire property from summer, fall, winter, you name it. I have a ton of projects always going around on the acreage, and this covers all of it, so I need it to run for a long time. So thanks, Jordan. We're going to get into it. There is a lot of lights on this thing. You guys are going to see the LEDs that come with it, but the strobe and everything is actually something that I wanted, because when you're snow blowing and it's dark at 4:30 in the evening, I like to make sure people at the end of my driveway can actually see me. So Jordan was saying that part of the normal here is to do these basic checks as well. It's not just about dropping fluids, and that's a little bit of extra service to make sure that everything's functioning. Got wipers, everything's good. Okay, so I think the first step is to drop some oil. So you're just going to find your engine oil plug. We're going to get that starting to drain. What is it, a 17 mil? Yeah. So 17, you're going to find everything metric on this, of course, because most of the world measures in science. And just like any time you're dropping oil, you're going to make sure you have a look in the oil for anything. We're not going to find anything, but it's always best to check. It's good practice too. You can see that he opened up the dipstick here, and that'll allow it to flow a little better. Little side note while you're under there, some of them actually have a shaft that goes through the oil pan, so there's actually two plugs that you're going to have to drop on this. A tip if you've ever seen it before, he's actually writing the date and hours on there for the filter. That way in the future you can see exactly where it landed. For myself, I'm at 47 hours. I'm a little early, but that never hurt anything. One thing you're going to notice is the first filter that's going to be put on from the factory is actually painted over, so it's gray. So if you've ever seen a machine with 100 hours or more, you should be concerned because they never met their first filter change. So Jordan's just tightening up both plugs. We're making sure that everything's nice and tight, and we're going to swap that filter out and fill it up with oil. Make sure to put the date upside down for me.
Yeah. Easy to read.
Yeah. One thing that we wanted to point out is when you're looking at these filters, and this is the hydraulic filter here. What's this one? Another hydraulic. Filter. Oh yeah. So they're going to have recommendations on hand tightening, and this one is 1 1/4 turns after that, or 15 Newton meters, and this one is 3/5 of a turn afterwards. So make sure to check all of your filters. They're going to be different, and make sure to follow those recommendations. Oh, look at that. It actually worked out. The numbers are actually the right way up. Perfect. So now it's time to fill up the engine oil, of course. So we pulled the plug here already. He's going to fill that up and basically just check the dipstick. I'm sure there's a exact amount you can look up. But here in a service shop, this is totally normal to just fill and check the dipstick. Double check after you warm it up and everything as well. So now we're just double checking on the stick, and what's going to happen is on first fire up, you're going to fill that filter, and then we're going to top it up after that.
So you're down that
much. Focus. Nailed it. So Jordan's crawling underneath here, and I have a GoPro set up, but this is quite difficult to obviously film and get two of us in there. So on either side of the transmission, you're actually going to see the two filters, and what he's going to do is swap these out as quick as possible in order to retain as much hydraulic fluid as possible. So you're going to see him do a hot swap here, and the pressure's on. I know exactly what this is like, because sometimes the threads don't line up, and obviously you're just going to be ripping and cursing to get this sorted out. But so now obviously there is no way you don't make a mess while doing this, so we recommend having pans set out and be prepared for that mess. So what we're going to do now, he actually did a great job in getting those on. We're going to make sure we do a little bit of brake clean, wipe things down, and the big importance on that is if you have a leak and you leave this mess there, it's going to be hard to determine where that leak is coming from. So you want to make sure you always clean your work afterwards, not just professionally, but for those reasons that I just stated. So we did lose quite a bit of hydraulic fluid. Of course, you're going to. That's just the nature of the beast when you're swapping those filters out. So what we're going to do after he's done there is put some hydraulic fluid in. So here we are at the back. You're going to see a port on the top, and that will allow you to fill up your hydraulic fluid. And just like your engine oil, you'll find a dipstick that will allow you to check the level and apply as much oil as you need. Another reminder for you guys that when you do get the level correct, you do want to run the machine and double check always. So he's got everything plugged up, the level was correct. He's just going to fire it up real quick. We're going to let everything cycle into all the places it needs to go to. That hydraulic fluid has a lot of places to be, so we're just going to double check they are exactly where they need to be and then fill up that hydraulic fluid. Okay, so now we're going to double check here. There's the focus. We are good to go. So before we actually put this shaft back in, we cleaned it up a little bit, and you obviously want to put some grease on here. Double check some of these Zerks. Sometimes you'll have paint over them from the manufacturer, and you want to make sure that those are actually cleaned off and they're accepting grease, because they'll just be painted right over for some of them. So we're going to grease that up and put it in. So now we're going around and we're going to grease everything up. I've only had the winter stuff and snowblower on for the last couple of hours, so this is pretty much some of the initial grease other than from when we ordered the machine. So we're going to get all that greased up, have a look around. Kubota wants every 10 hours on most of their equipment. So we're going to do a full loop and find all of that. So now that we have everything greased up, there's still a lot of other joints that you need to lube up. One of the examples here is your chute for your snowblower. So we're going to go around and make sure that all of these places have a little bit of lubrication. So something that's good to check, of course, is your air filter. This is something you should be doing as well as grease while you're operating, but we're going to check it here today and make sure that it's actually in good shape, something to get in the good habit of checking. So we're good to go. It's not actually part of the 50 point, but it is something good to check, like everything else that we're doing here today. And just like the air filter, of course, checking your battery terminals for a good connection, make sure there's no corrosion. Standard things to be checking on a lot of your equipment when you're maintaining it. Of course, some of the other things that you can check out, like your coolant reservoir here, as long as it's between these two markers, you're checked out, you're all good. Of course, you can put your peepers on just about anything here and make sure everything is in working order, like the fan belt here, for example. For some of the Kubota products, you'll find these rad screens and stuff like that. You can make sure you don't have half a hay bale stuck in there. With this cab model, of course, we do have wiper fluid. Something to consider is maybe the change of seasons. If you're going to be in the winter and it's minus 30 all of a sudden, you may want to check if you don't have summer fluid frozen in there. So now that we have all this cleaned up and closed up, we're actually going to have a look at this front axle. Make sure the fluid's good to go there as well. And we're good. So while Jordan is getting ready to get some torque on a lot of these different bolts, something I should mention, if you don't get a ton of hours or are seasonal with your machine, you may want to consider what fuel you're using. For example, here in Canada, we have summer and winter diesel that have different additives to make sure it doesn't gel up. So make sure when that transition to season happens, like your windshield washer fluid is swapped out, you're using the correct fuel, or you can put an additive to make sure it doesn't gel up. Now, depending on your application and what machine you're actually working on, and all of this is going to be in your owner's manual for your maintenance, you're going to have lots of torque that you need to check, especially on this first 50 hour, but it's also important down the road. For my example, we have a subframe for the loader. You might want to check that. You also have your tires. You're going to make sure all of that's torqued down. You just want to get eyes on to make sure none of this is backing off. So Jordan here is going to do a full pass on all four corners, and then we're going to move on to the subframe and loader frame. On the back here, you're going to notice that this wheel has bolts and studs, and they actually have different torque specs. So now that we're done torquing the tires, what Jordan's going to do is he's going to go through and torque all of these subframe bolts or loader frame bolts. You're going to find all of the specs for that inside your manual. There's going to be multiple sizes and multiple different torques, so please pay attention to your manual and what it wants. But this is one of those components that gets added onto the tractor, so they just want to double check that everything's torqued down properly, especially after some use. Okay guys, so there it is. There's your 50-hour service. You're going to see a few extras in here than you are going to see in your owner's manual. I think it's just good habit to get around and do those things as well. Some of them won't be there, but they are good to check. One thing I did want to note is there is a cabin filter if you do have a cab. It's just at the back. Make sure that that's not clogged so you can get some fresh air in that cab. Otherwise, if you have any questions, please leave them down below and we'll do our best to answer them. It's always great to refer to your manual, but we are a resource that is available to you. We have our contact information in the description. So we'll see you guys next time.